Hello and welcome to I Got My Miracle. I'm so grateful to be here with Ed. Thank you so much, man, for coming. We've had a great week together. Each week at Rythmia, Rythmia, our thing is the miracle. Like, did you get your miracle? What is a miracle? A miracle for us is that you've seen who you've become, you've merged with your soul, and you've healed your heart and forgiven the unforgivable. And each week we invite one person from the group that was here during that week to sort of represent the field of miracles. And so today in our closing circle and throughout the week, I've enjoyed Ed so much. And I asked him, and he was nice enough to say yes. Thank you, man.
My pleasure.
Welcome. So let's start with what brought you to Rythmia. This is your second time.
My second time. My first time was 6 months ago. I had a military background and had gone through the PTSD process and had been homeless. And I was putting myself back together, but I recognized that in my relationships, there was still a lot of work to be done. And I knew that there were things that I needed to figure out. And 6 months ago, I came here. And when you talk about miracles, it sounds kind of, it
Totally
sounds
corny.
kind of corny, right?
Yeah.
but it is true. It's true. What I experienced 6 months ago was phenomenal. I was awestruck, and coming back, I thought it would be. I thought it can't happen a second time. I couldn't go deeper than I went the first time, and I've just finished my second week here, and again, it's been just awesome is overused, right? But like awestruck, just dumbfounded by what I've seen is happened for a second time.
Wow. So you kind of glossed over, I was in the military and I was homeless, but I think that's a big piece. You had shared with me earlier that you're a UK citizen and you were in Afghanistan as a platoon commander.
When you talk about that?
Just for a little context or background.
Okay, so I'm British, joined the British Army, went through officer training, deployed to Afghanistan as an infantry role. So for the veterans out there, a platoon commander. I was never in the special forces and in the regular army. We had a heavy tour in Afghanistan, and I was only in the army for 4 years. And when I left, I knew that things weren't quite right, but I then started working in the Middle East in security roles, in a range of different protective roles and various other things in war zones. And after 5 years of doing that, I essentially stopped sleeping, and a bunch of other things, and I became homeless. And during that time, I had reached out to. I knew that there were problems, so I'd gone to the doctor and I'd gone to the various people who are set up to help veterans. And there's one particular group in the UK. It's the biggest at the time. It was the biggest charity to help veterans, and I went to them for a year to get help. And because of the scale of the problem, they were overwhelmed. And after a year of during that year of trying to get help from them, I was so desperate, and I had come to. I didn't realize this until I got to Rythmia 6 months ago, but I had come to deeply believe that my death didn't matter, and not on an intellectual level, but on a very deep consciousness level. And do you want me to talk about the vision?
Please.
And so 6 months ago, I had if I'm talking to somebody who has never had a vision, I understand it sounds crazy, but I had the most extraordinary experience one night of being part of a funeral process. And
this was in ceremony.
In
this
ceremony.
was an ayahuasca ceremony last time you were at Rythmia.
That's right.
Okay.
Thank you. And I was the center of the funeral ceremony, and it was a great grand, like in a kind of pyramid with all this gold, and my body was wrapped in cloth, and I was taken down into the underworld, and I was shown some extraordinary things, and I was a really big deal in this story. And the next morning, when people are talking about the experiences, I didn't say anything because it sounds so crazy. It sounds so big-headed and so like, oh, grandiose. And it wasn't until the following night in ceremony again that I got a glimpse of maybe what it was about was that I'd come to deeply believe on a very deep visceral level that my death didn't matter, and that vision showed me that my death, it wasn't just that my death didn't matter, that it did matter. It mattered on a level that was so much more important than I could possibly imagine. And you then, okay, if my death matters more than I can possibly imagine, my life matters more than I could possibly imagine. And so the veterans watching out there, your life matters on a level that is so extraordinarily greater than you think. And of course it does. You'll have children, you'll look after your families, you'll be a member of your community. Of course, your life is precious beyond what you can imagine.
That's such a beautiful story. And if I can, so much of what we're taught is about being humble. Don't be big-headed. Don't be egotistical, self-centered, self-aggrandizing. And those things are all good reminders. But I think there's some confusion around the truth. There's the immature ego that goes through comparison, superiority, inferiority, and even equality is a system of measurement. Reverend Michael's teachings around the life structure of ego is that the maturation of the ego is when one truly understands their own incomparability, that there is no comparison because there's not another you, never has been, never will be. On the level of physics, in an infinite system, wherever two lines cross is the center. In an infinite system, if two lines cross, that's the center. And on a metaphysical level, then in an infinite system of consciousness, its center then is everywhere, and its circumference is nowhere. And so without hubris, I can say, I am the center of the universe. Now, our Judeo-Christian, sort of mythology is like, whoa, wait a minute, but the truth is, each one of us an incomparable expression of the divine, emerging. We weren't made, we are emerged from this field of infinite possibility, a potentiality from a field of infinite potentialities taken form to become one, the expression of one potentiality, or taken form, a potentiality taken form. A wave becomes a particle, And so your Egyptian funeral procession is that celebration of your incomparability, not hubris, not egoism, not self-centered or self-aggrandizing, but the truth that you're incomparable, and so am I. And my incomparability doesn't take away from your incomparability. And as you share that beautiful invitation to veterans or to anyone who feels their life doesn't matter, that you are the center of the universe, and that's not hubris. That is the truth. That the moment you emerge from this field, there's a cosmic celebration, you know, that we matter infinitely more than we can imagine. Does that
Beautiful.
jive with what you were feeling that night?
Yeah, but something from, I think, particularly from military settings, is this idea that if you're an asset until you're not, and then you're a liability. Now that's not necessarily taught, expressed in that way, but I think from my experience, that's how a lot of veterans who go into the abyss can feel, and they see their other friends carrying on, able to carry on, going on to the next part of their life, and they compare, and why me? Why can't I carry on? And that idea of, if you're not an asset, you're a liability, is so problematic for people who have dedicated their lives to their duty and to protecting others and wanting to serve and being an asset. To find yourself a liability, or to carry on giving yourself the impression that you're a liability, is incredibly detrimental.
Thank you for that clarification. And I think that it could be relatable. I can relate to it from the sense of feeling the need to prove my worth. Maybe on a different level, but that sense of I have to prove my value through my actions, through my doing. But your story. So you had shared with me earlier that when you came to Rythmia the first time, you had really worked through a lot of the PTSD from your military experience. But there was still something more that called you here. Tell me about that shift for you and how that continued in this week. Or was this week different?
Well, so I had dealt with I had got some help from a lady in the UK called Mandy Boswick, and she had helped me with a bunch of the PTSD symptoms, and she got me back out of the suicidal, lack of sleep, all the sort of things that the veteran community will know about. But because for so many years I thought that I was the problem, any problem I had in relationships I thought was me, and I just assumed that I was always the problem. And so, okay, I'd sorted out the sleep and I sorted out some other things, but when the opportunity to come here 6 months ago, I thought, yeah, I've got all these other problems related to the military that I need to sort out because my relationships aren't working quite as well. But when I came here and you guys said, hey, just lay down your intention, whatever you think you're coming here for, just lay them down and work just with these 3 intentions for now and see how you get on. And oh my word, like I had no idea that there was this whole other world that I was missing. And do you want me to talk about that?
Please, yeah. I mean, whatever's coming up for you.
So years ago, I was on a hillside after the army, and I was homeless, and I was sitting on a hillside. An old man told me a dream about a story, and after he finished the story, he said, "Tonight you may dream very strongly because these stories will activate a part of the mind, the mythos part of the mind." And the story that I had, the dream that night was incredibly vivid, of being outside a Gothic mental asylum, raining, something like the Arkham Asylum in Gotham, raining and lightning, a real scary place. And I had to break in to the asylum and go down into the depths, into the darkest, wettest, horrible part of the asylum to rescue something. And I went down into the bowels of this place, sneaking about, and they got to these big gates, and I knew the thing that I had to rescue was behind these big gates. And because they were so big, the gates were so big and heavy and locked, and I assumed it was some kind of monster. and I had these cookies, and my job was to try and bring this thing out with cookies. I was trying to, but I never saw the monster. And then when I came here 6 months ago, and they were talking about the inner child and merging with your soul, I had the second part of the dream, and it took me back to the mental asylum and back to the dark place. And when the gates were opened, it was my little self. It wasn't a monster at all. It was the little boy, and we were able to, after some, he was, when I was a kid, I was called Eddie, and I always hated that. When I got old, I hated that name, and I'd even forgotten that for all those years I was called Eddie, and I'd hated that name because to me it was something of weakness. He was a scared little boy, and when we came back together, I had to apologize for leaving him so long, and quite things happened to me following those months. Like the little boy, like the fun part of me, the boy that likes to play, has come back to me. I've got a 3-year-old son now, and I'm able to play with him in a way that I probably wouldn't have been able to before that. And it's brought a joy back to my life and a level of fun that I'd forgotten about, and I'm so grateful.
Oh, what a vision! What a story! Like just that visual of this gothic, asylum and this monster locked up, and it's Eddie.
Yeah,
just waiting. Whew. So powerful, brother. So that was your first time, and what shifted for you over the last 6 months? What was the lifestyle change for you? One thing, the fun part of you came back. You're able to play again with your child, and
the problems that I would have had before. So the unbelievable discomfort of faced with, when veterans, well, often when they end up homeless or they often end up have these problems, they isolate themselves. I believe out of a deep desire not to hurt their family members and their friends, and the pain of the things you do in war, the shame and the guilt and the various experiences that you have, and the isolation from family afterwards, that holding those things can be can be a heavy burden. And so, my life was often about just going from one experience to another. I can spend my day going from a chocolate bar to this thing, to a drink, to a smoke, to anything to not feel that thing. And so I had a tough experience a few months ago, and all of that pain, and I ran from it for 3 weeks. I smoked as much weed as I could. I didn't move from a sofa. I stuffed myself till I was sick. My whole body was and I knew that I'd been taught something here, and I went home and I fasted for 6 days, and it broke the back of that anger. And I sat for those 6 days, and without any of the distractions, without any of the running from the pain. It's tough, but after 6 days, the anger went. It left me, and I was left in a place of such peace. And these spiritual practices, just like when you're training in the army, whether it's with your pistol, rifle, whether it's combat trauma, first aid, whether it's whatever it is, you look at spiritual practice like that. It's a regular thing every day that you're bringing into life, the affirmations, the fasting, the meditation, the breathing exercises. Those are the things to use to help with the, at times, unbearable pain that you don't need to mask, that can be, you don't need to cover it with drugs and alcohol, although we all do at times, but
Sure.
you don't need to do that. There can be other ways to sit in the pain and experience it and go through it.
You had shared with me that this was really stretching you beyond your comfort zone to come share like this after being in roles in the military where you were hidden and not out in public. So I just want to acknowledge you. Thank you for the generosity of your sharing. So this time you had shared that you had bought this next trip for your wife, but she's not coming for various reasons. And so you decided to come back and thinking you had a great time last time, probably not going to top it, or what else could there be? What was your experience this time?
As the week went through, I hadn't had the kind of visions that I'd had before. And so in my head, I thought, yeah, maybe I'm right. Maybe it's not going to be like the miracle you talk about. I thought, that's okay. Like, maybe I probably won't have that. Like it'll be a lesser experience. And yet, on the last night in ceremony, it's so difficult to articulate some of these, I suppose, what we would call spiritual experiences. But the layers of grief, the layers of shame and guilt, and the sense of loss that perhaps everybody has this, but I see my brothers in the veteran community, and I see for years isolation and depression, suicide, drug addiction, and all sorts of pain, and I think that it becomes deeply embedded. And so coming here for a second time, I thought I'd done the work, only to find that there was even more layers to shift, more peace to feel, greater levels of joy. When you've not felt joy for some time, to then first feel joy again, it's like, oh, this is joy. Oh, wonderful. And then to find later on there's more joy. Like, what? I didn't know that there was more beauty. So, yeah.
Ed, man, you're just a remarkable individual. Thank you, brother. Is there anything else that wants to be said? Anything else that you want to share? That you doesn't have to. I just wanted to see if there's something that wanted to come forward.
I think I would say to my brothers, wherever you are in the world, to those men that go to war, who stand shoulder to shoulder and protect each other, that you've done your duty, and there is this experience doesn't have to be a death sentence, that there is freedom from it, and there is joy to be rediscovered. And I just encourage you to look at some of these things, experience them, and God bless you.
God bless you, brother.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been extraordinary to be with you this week. And, from seeing the guy that sat in the back of the room with just this big smile on your face, like all week, every time I saw you, you were like, to see and to hear the depth and profundity of your experience and your life, and who you are as a remarkable individual. Thank you for sharing yourself today. Just been an honor.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, brother. And thank you all for joining us. Have a beautiful rest of your day. And we'll see you next week. Blessings.